$100 million.
Julia Hedges. Voting's underway in Ireland in a landmark referendum on whether or not to legalise same-sex marriage.
And it would be the first country in the world to pass this by popular vote.
If the referendum passes, Ireland would become the first country to endorse gay marriage by popular vote.
Ireland is the first country to put this issue to a vote, right, to public referendum.
The issue's created a deep division in the country, known for its long history of Catholic traditions. Campaigners turned out in Dublin to try and urge voters to vote yes in the referendum. They enjoy support too from major political parties, businesses and the current Prime Minister. The opposition campaigners, however, argue there's no need to allow gay marriages. In their view, same-sex couples already have equality. Activist Paddy Manning spoke to us and says the no camp is being bullied, he thinks, by those taking the moral high ground.
I campaigned for gay rights. I absolutely believe that gay people have the right to be full citizens, that we have the right to be safe, we have the right to civil partnerships, something I campaigned for. Although I'm a Catholic, I'm opposed to it because it's just a stupid idea. Trouble for the yes campaigners was that their approach to the Irish electorate was hectoring, bullying, and they felt morally superior. What they've tried to do is exclude Catholics from the debate. What they're actually saying is, if you're a Catholic, you can't oppose this because it doesn't touch religion.
More news after a very short break. We're talking about why California is suffering from a major drought, but Nestle says it won't stop bottling the state's water despite angry protests. We get reaction as to why it's one rule for some and one rule for another by the looks of it.
No, I will leave that to the State Department to comment on your latter point.
I don't want to say that.
Mr. Kerry, do you have any comments on the document? No comment? Thank you.
No more weasel words. When you evade a direct question, be prepared for a chase. When you throw a punch, be ready for a battle.
Freedom of speech means little without the freedom to question.
Hello again. Swiss food giant Nestle is refusing to wrap up its water bottling business in the drought-stricken US state of California, despite growing pressure from residents over it.
Nestle is definitely a carpetbagger, because if they see a resource to seize, you can bet they will start poking holes and trying to get at it.
Well, protests have been staged all across the state, with activists gathering outside the company's bottling plants. Hundreds of thousands of people have also signed a petition to try and force the firm to halt its operations while water's so scarce right now. They argue that the companies such as Nestle should not be allowed to privatise and profit from what is a public asset, they say. And it's a real different story for households in California. They're under intense restrictions right now over this drought. Nearly 2 million people are thought to be without access to clean, running drinking water out the taps. Not that their plight has moved the Nestle boss. Here he is. Over here, Tom Brown, the firm's North American chief executive. He says he's absolutely not willing to stop Nestle's operations, bottling that water coming up from underground. He added that, in fact, he would increase the amount of ground-sourced water needed if he could. Well, thoughts about that from attorney Karen Mandelbaum from the Freshwater Programme, who expands on the reasons why residents are so, obviously, you may say, angry right now.
Many are upset. Those that have gone out in the streets are just a small fraction of the Californians who are upset that a lot of people are wasting water throughout the state. Nestle is a large company. They own 9 plants, I believe, here in California, 5 of which are water bottling plants. So long as that market continues to demand the bottled water, Nestle will be able to continue to operate despite political activism. Everyone in California, including foreign companies, have the responsibility of conserving water, particularly during this crisis time of drought.
Well, let's take a look at why this year's drought in California is getting so much attention. It's a real huge problem. First of all, scientists believe it could be the worst in 1,000 years. Virtually all of the state is classed as being under drought conditions right now, and that's what's prompted the authorities to call on citizens to cut their water consumption by more than a third. This year alone, that drought cost more than 17,000 farming jobs and cost the government $2 billion. Residents are doing their bit, it must be said, even if some firms aren't, even resorting to a bit of drought shaming, taking to Twitter Twitter to expose people who won't cut their water consumption. They're posting pictures of the mansions of celebrities and other wealthy Californians like rapper Kanye West's lush green lawn. Also, Sean Penn's doesn't look too bad either. Don't know how he's doing it. And internet entrepreneur Larry Ellison seems to be keeping his lush private golf course in tip-top shape as well. Maybe it's made of plastic. At the other end of the scale, street cleaners, well, it's hot out there, they say, are getting drought shamed too by being a bit too handy with a hose. Online, more stories we're talking about. Stowaways have been caught red-handed trying to cross the border in a little more comfort than usual. 10 illegal immigrants have been discovered inside luxury sports cars trying to sneak into Britain. This, of course, says the UK is big news in the UK at the moment, trying to tighten the grip over unwelcome visitors. If you want more of the story, it's on our site. And signing up suicide bombers, an Al-Qaeda application form has been uncovered and made public, as RT.com reports. There's a warning that World War III will erupt in just a few years unless the US financial system opens up to China. Who said that? Billionaire investor George Soros has said it. He says America needs to let Beijing join the global currency basket or the consequences could prove catastrophic.
If there is conflict between China and a military ally of the United States, like Japan, then it is not an exaggeration to say that we are on the threshold of a third world war.
To avoid disasters, Soros says Washington should strengthen its economic ties with Beijing, and it's not the only fly in the ointment either. China's clearly irked by the US building up its military presence in the region. On Thursday, Beijing indeed issued 8 warnings over American spy planes swooping over the South China Sea. Regular military drills on China's doorstep and a strategic shift of US bases to the Asia-Pacific aren't exactly helping to ease tensions further there either. If you look at the map, you'll see the map shows you the number of US military facilities in Beijing's backyard. However, according to US officials, it's actually China's claims on Southeast Asian sea territories that's what's really destabilising the region. I spoke to Brendan O'Reilly. He's a China-based writer. He thinks that position, though, is hypocritical.
China is spending more and more on their military, but their economy is also expanding at a still fairly robust level. That's not really true in the United States anymore. The United States spends more money on its military than the next, at least something like 20 powers put together. So I think it's extremely hypocritical for Washington to condemn Beijing's military buildup in a region which is essentially right off the coast of China.
Hundreds marched in Olympia, Washington, against what they call a race-related police shooting of 2 unarmed men. The men reportedly assaulted a police officer during a failed robbery and were shot in the chest. The officer has since been on administrative leave. Protesters likened the incident to high-profile cases of fatal police brutality, which led to the deaths of Freddie Gray and Michael Brown. Heavy downpours triggered flooding in southern China. Swathes of land waterlogged there. Power cut off too in a lot of areas. Many villages were stranded as most roads were inundated by the overflowing rivers. Local police were called to the scene to rescue those trapped by the waters. Luckily, no casualties reported. Taliban radicals are threatening to, quote, kill like dogs 2 former Afghan interpreters who worked for NATO troops. The men have already survived several assassination attempts. And they're not the only ones. Scores of Afghan interpreters have been murdered by the Taliban, while others have been injured in attacks. Their family members suffer injuries and kidnappings too. Some of the interpreters try to seek shelter in the countries they risk their lives for. But that's another long-term battle, as Polly Boyker reports.
They are the forgotten heroes of the war in Afghanistan. Without them, the task of communicating with the local population would be near impossible for our troops.
This is a news report from 2011.
With the military interpreters to find out more about their valuable and often dangerous job.
But now hundreds of those Afghan interpreters say it was a thankless task. This was some of them protesting outside the British Embassy in Kabul last year. Many of them now say their lives are in danger because the Taliban considers them traitors and wants them dead.
I have personally received a written warning from the Taliban that they wrote in very clearly that I was working with the infidel British, and whenever they have the chance, they find me, they will kill me.
Currently, former Afghan interpreters can apply for a 5-year working visa to come to the UK. But the devil is in the detail. Only those who worked after December 2012 and for over a year can apply, which only covers around half of the 1,300 or so former interpreters.
I feel that those interpreters who have served the British forces with all their hard work and sacrifices that they made there, at the end meant nothing to the British forces and British government.
Of the hundreds that don't qualify for the current resettlement scheme, just one has been deemed to be at enough risk to warrant a UK visa.
It just shows that our asylum system is completely broken. It doesn't work. We routinely give asylum to people who don't deserve it and then deny it to people who really do deserve it.
Well, in an attempt to get answers as to why so many former Afghan interpreters don't qualify for the current government scheme, I sent questions to 3 different government departments. And in the end, I got a statement from the people that work in this building, the Ministry of Defence. They told me that the UK government believes its policy is legal, honourable and fair.
And I'm fighting this only because I want safety for my kids and other men like me who have served. We have gained a very bad name in our society only because of supporting you. Now you have a good name in your society for supporting us.
Polly Boyko, RT, London.
Banks or people's computers are usually the classic targets of cyber attacks, but now apparently hackers have got their sights on global oil revenues too. One security firm suggesting there's been a whole string of attacks on oil tankers that's been going on for years. We talked to the report's author.
They were trying to steal some kind of documents from those companies in order to perform some scams against oil brokers. They were stealing information, using that information to make a scam, and with that scam they will be earning hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Dozens of oil companies have apparently been hacked but didn't even report the attacks. Louis Curran again on why they failed to do so.
Those companies were being breached and their credentials were being stolen, and the criminals were using that to copy documents that those companies had. But other than that, those companies were not suffering any damage, so any losses or anything like that. So back at that point, they felt that it was even more risky to report this to the law enforcement, because in that case, the name of their companies could be in the news, and that's a really bad reputation for these kind of companies. And they decided not to report it.
Oil companies is just one large-scale target for cyber attacks these days. Earlier this month, you may remember we told you about the security expert who claimed he managed to hack into an aeroplane's avionics, which he told us gave him partial control of the engines. When it comes to financial firms, in February it was revealed hackers stole $1 billion from more than 100 banks around the world over the course of a couple of years. Even your social life's in the hackers' crosshairs too. There is no escape, it seems. Facebook and Twitter accounts are regularly posted. It goes on. Sony, Amazon, eBay. You name it, they've all had their media services downed by cyber criminals. Even traffic lights or TVs can be hacked into, causing chaos on the streets or beaming some unwanted content onto your flat screen. Our wardrobes are filled with clothes made with cotton, yet the Indian farmers providing that textile fibre barely make a living. We exposed that after the break.